Why do so many people quietly disappear from your life after turning 70? No farewell. No explanation. They just stop showing up. It's not because they're upset. It's not because they're sick. It's because something inside them has awakened. They've realized a truth they never dared to face before. Not every visit brings joy. Not every relationship needs to be preserved. And not everyone deserves their presence. If you're over 70 and find yourself no longer eager to go out, no longer excited to make visits, then stay with this video until the end. Because what you're feeling isn't giving up. It's a turning point. It's the kind of wisdom that only comes after decades of living. In today's video, we'll explore 6 honest, deeply human reasons why many people after 70 stop visiting others, and why this choice is not just okay, but something to be respected. Before we begin, where are you watching from? Please share your state or country in the comments. And if you enjoyed gentle, inspiring content made just for this stage of life, consider subscribing to our channel so we can continue this journey together. Reason 1. Emotional boundaries. After 70, one quiet truth becomes clear. Emotional exhaustion hits faster than physical fatigue. We often expect to feel tired after being out all day. But the real drain comes from conversations that used to feel harmless. Now, they weigh you down. Complaints that go in circles. Old stories repeated again and again. Talking without listening. You come home not uplifted but empty. At this stage, you begin to understand. Not every interaction nourishes the soul. Some gatherings leave your heart tense and your mind cloudy. And it's not because they did something wrong. It's because you've changed. You're no longer willing to smile through discomfort or invest your energy where it's not returned. Think of someone like George, 83. For years, he visited his younger brother every Sunday. But over time, each visit turned into arguments. Politics. The past. Family tension. George would go home with a pounding heart, feeling upset and drained. One day, he simply stopped going. His brother didn't understand. But George did. He chose peace over obligation. This is not coldness. It's maturity. Just like you wouldn't walk on a sore ankle, you don't walk into conversations that twist your spirit. You begin to recognize when a connection no longer feels mutual. When someone checks their phone instead of looking into your eyes. When you're tolerated, not cherished. That realization becomes impossible to ignore. So instead of showing up out of habit, you start protecting your emotional space. You no longer force yourself into roles you've outgrown. You save your presence for those who truly see you. You're not cutting people off. You're preserving what's left of your peace. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is quietly stop going where your heart no longer feels safe. If you're watching this and this resonates with you, comment 1 below so I know you're here. Because sometimes, the greatest gift after 70 is the permission to walk away from places that no longer feel like home. Now, let's explore something else that becomes crystal clear with age. Time. And how we start valuing it in a completely different way. Reason 2. Time revaluation. There comes a morning after 70 when you open your window, feel the sun, and realize there may not be as many mornings left as you once believed. But it's not frightening. It's sobering. Time becomes personal, sacred, and you start asking yourself, who do I want to give it to? In the past, you might have spent hours at gatherings out of politeness, picked up the phone just to keep a connection alive, agreed to plans that didn't fill your heart, because there was always more time, but not anymore. Time is now your treasure, and you guard it gently. You begin to realize A quiet afternoon by the lake can be more fulfilling than a 3-hour visit filled with small talk and routine. You're not withdrawing. You're choosing. Choosing joy over duty. Choosing meaning over habit. Like Elaine, 77. She used to drive 2 hours every month to visit a cousin. They'd eat, chat, watch the same shows. Nothing wrong, but nothing new. One afternoon by the lake, sketchbook in hand, Elaine thought, I'd rather be here. So she stopped the visits. Not out of resentment, but because she was finally listening to her own needs. After a lifetime of giving time to others, you start giving it back to yourself. A slow cup of coffee, a familiar song, a quiet morning. These moments heal more than we realize. You stop saying yes when you mean no. You say, thank you, but I'll stay home today. And you don't feel guilty anymore. Because peace has become the priority. You no longer plan around others. You build a day that feels like yours. If you've ever said, I just want time for myself, comment 2 below. I want to know how many of us are reclaiming the rhythm of our own lives. Because when you know your time is limited, you stop spending it on things that drain you. And next, we'll explore what happens when even being around others leaves you emotionally exhausted. Not because of drama, but because something inside you has shifted for good. Reason 3. Emotional drain. You used to believe that only conflict made a visit hard. But now, you've discovered something else. What truly drains you is emptiness. No one yelled. No one said anything hurtful. But somehow, you leave the gathering feeling hollow. Not angry. Not sad. Just tired in a way you can't explain. Because nothing real was exchanged. They spoke. You nodded. They laughed. You smiled politely. But your heart wasn't in the room. It was waiting for something deeper. And it never came. You used to put up with it. You were kind. You stayed quiet. You let others speak over you. You didn't want to offend. But now, you can't fake it anymore. You don't want to. This isn't rudeness. It's emotional maturity. You're no longer willing to spend your limited energy on conversations that don't feed your soul. Think of Robert, 75. Every weekend, he'd go to his sister's home for lunch with the extended family. They talked nonstop, but no one asked how he was doing. No one really listened. It was all noise. One day he stopped going. No drama. No announcement. He simply chose something else. Now he spends that time gardening, reading, or walking with a neighbor who truly listens. And you know what? He's happier. As we age, we become more selective. Not because we're antisocial, but because we know what connection feels like. And we know when it's missing. Psychologists call it emotional selectivity. You start craving depth. You stop forcing smiles. You realize that a quiet afternoon alone is often more nourishing than forced company. If you've ever left a visit feeling more drained than before, comment 3 below. That's your inner wisdom speaking. And you're not alone. Because when you stop pretending, when you protect your emotional space, you start feeling lighter. And that lightness is freedom. Now, let's look at a different kind of exhaustion. One that starts not in the heart, but in the body. Reason 4. Physical energy. No one tells you this. But after 70, even a short visit can feel like a full-day mission. You begin the day with the best intentions. You get dressed. Grab a little gift. Step out the door. But by the time you come home, it feels like you've climbed a mountain. And that's not weakness. That's your body asking for respect. Your energy is no longer endless. Every outing costs something. Not just time, But recovery, a 2-hour visit might steal the rest of your day, or the next. But others don't see the cost. They just notice you're not around as much. They don't know what it takes to show up at all. Behind every no is a quiet calculation. Can I handle this today? Will it take too much from me? You begin to notice the small things. Hard chairs, loud voices, foods that upset your stomach, stairs that challenge your knees. These didn't matter at 50, but now they do. And rather than push yourself to keep appearances, you start choosing rest, comfort, gentleness. Not because you've given up, but because you've learned what matters. Psychologists call this embodied wisdom. It's when your body speaks its own truth. It tells you what's too much, and you listen. You realize your energy has value. You shouldn't spend it on discomfort. You protect it, like the precious resource it is. Think of Carol, 79. For years, she met her old friends every week for coffee. But lately, just driving there, parking, walking to the table and sitting on a hard bench left her sore for hours. When she stopped going, one friend said, "But we miss you." Carol replied softly, "I miss me too. Especially when I overdo it. That's not selfish. That's wisdom in motion." If you've ever skipped a gathering because your body said no, comment 4 below. That's strength. That's self-respect. Because when you choose rest over effort, you're not pulling away. You're honoring what your body has carried all these years. And next, we'll look at something equally powerful. How, as we grow older, we learn to manage our emotions the way we manage our finances. Carefully, deliberately, and with dignity. Reason 5. Emotional economy. There comes a time in life when you begin to treat your emotional energy like money. You stop spending it on things that give you nothing back. In your younger years, you tolerated more. You forgave quickly. You kept the peace, even when it cost you your well-being. You bit your tongue. You smiled through the sting of someone's words. You showed up even when you were tired, disrespected, or ignored. Why? Because you believed it was your role. To be agreeable. To hold the family together. To avoid conflict at all costs. But after 70, something changes. The mask slips. And for the first time, you start asking, "What about me?" You realize your emotional battery doesn't recharge like it used to. Stress lasts longer. Negative energy lingers. And you no longer feel the need to prove your worth or win approval. That clarity gives you power. You begin to say things like, "I don't need this in my life anymore." It could be a friend who always finds fault. A sibling who drains your spirit. A neighbor who never calls unless there's something to complain about. You stop giving out your peace like it's free. Instead, you invest in those who bring warmth, encouragement, mutual respect. You stop chasing people who don't check in. You stop explaining yourself to those who never understood you anyway. You treat your emotional world like a garden. You clear out the weeds so the joy can grow. Think of Walter. He's 82. For years, he called his son every Sunday. But the calls always ended in tension. His son never asked how he was doing. Always rushed. Often critical. One day, Walter said, "This isn't love. This is duty," and he stopped calling. Not to punish, but to protect himself. Instead, he started spending time with a neighbor who shares his love for jazz and crossword puzzles. And he felt more peace than he had in years. That's emotional economy. You've earned the right to guard your peace. You don't need to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't need to chase love or beg to be seen. You already know who you are. You know what you offer, and what you will no longer tolerate. If you've stopped giving energy to chaos and started watering peace, comment 5 below. Because in that quiet space, you begin to find the pieces of yourself that were buried under obligation. And that stillness? That's not selfish. That's survival. Now, let's talk about the final, most powerful shift of all. The moment you stop asking for permission to value yourself, and finally start living on your own terms. Reason 6. Self-respect awakening. One day in your later years, something inside you quietly shifts. You no longer ask for permission to rest. You no longer need approval to say no. You stop worrying about disappointing people, and you start protecting your dignity. That's what we call the self-respect awakening. It doesn't come with fanfare. It doesn't arrive loudly. It comes softly. After one too many times being dismissed, overlooked, or taken for granted. But once it shows up, you never go back. When you were younger, kindness often looked like compliance. You helped everyone. You kept the peace. You made yourself small so others could feel big. You said yes when your heart said no, because the cost of upsetting others felt too high. But after 70, the cost of betraying yourself becomes even higher. You begin choosing differently. You decline invitations that feel like obligations. You stop entertaining people who treat you like a backup plan. You walk away from conversations that leave you drained. You stop lowering your standards just to be included. Because now, you see something clearly. Peace is more important than popularity. There's a quiet power that lives in older people. You can see it in their eyes, in their posture, in the way they hold a pause before speaking. It's not arrogance. It's earned self-respect. It comes from decades of being underestimated, told to settle, told to stay quiet, and finally saying, no more. You begin to set boundaries, not out of anger, but out of love. For yourself. Take Margaret, 76. For years, she was the go-to person in her family. Babysitting, hosting, lending, organizing. One day, when everyone expected her to plan the next big holiday, she said, "This year, I'm going to the lake." Alone. Her daughter was stunned. "But Mom, everyone's counting on you." Margaret smiled gently. "This time I'm counting on me." That moment didn't just change one weekend. It changed everything. Her family started respecting her space. And Margaret learned to honor her needs. That's the awakening. Not shutting people out, but showing them how to treat you by the way you treat yourself. When you stop begging for scraps of attention, people either rise to meet you or fall away. Either way, you win, because you're no longer depending on others to define your worth. You're standing in it. If you've ever walked away from a place that made you feel small, comment 6 below. Because after all these years, you don't owe anyone your energy. You owe yourself your peace. Now, let's bring this journey home with one final message for your heart. Final thoughts. If you've reached your 70s and find yourself pulling away from visits, if you choose quiet over chatter, solitude over schedules, stillness over strain, please know this: you are not broken. You are not giving up. What you are doing, often without even realizing it, is stepping into a wiser, more authentic version of yourself. Aging, for all its challenges, is also a powerful teacher. It strips away the noise, the pressure, the old expectations. It clears your vision. You begin to see what truly matters and what never did. You realize not every relationship is meant to last forever. Not every invitation needs a yes. And not every version of yourself needs to remain the same. You are allowed to evolve. Sometimes that evolution means walking away from certain people, certain places, certain routines that no longer bring you peace. You start treating your energy as sacred. Because it is. You begin choosing depth instead of drama, honesty instead of harmony, truth instead of tradition. And while this new path may feel lonely at times, it's actually where your truest self begins to shine. So if you've stopped visiting as often, don't let guilt whisper that you're being selfish. You're not. You're being selective. If you enjoy quiet mornings more than noisy gatherings, that doesn't mean you've become distant. It means you're finally listening to the rhythm of your own soul. And if others don't understand, that's okay. Not everyone is meant to walk with you into this wise, golden season of life. You've earned this peace. You've earned the right to put yourself first. And you've earned the wisdom to know that stepping back isn't the same as giving up. It's growing up. Gracefully. Thank you for being here with us today. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Share one thing that resonated with you in the comments, and how you plan to carry it into your life. If this video spoke to your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it too. Your presence here means more than you know. And we look forward to seeing you in the next one.